Hello and welcome to the program. Russia's ambition to head the international police agency Interpol were dashed after delegates chose South Korea's Jong to take the role. The possible selection of Russia's candidate Alexander Prokopchuk has alarmed Ukraine, the US and some European states over concerns that Russia could use the organization to target political opponents. Now joining us in our studio today to expand on this topic is Alexander Demyanchuk, head of the political science department at National University of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy. Hello and thank you for joining us. So the first question, why was that so important for Ukraine that a Russian delegate wouldn't be elected at the head of the Interpol agency?
Well, first of all, because Ukrainian politicians do a lot of job to resist to the Russian invasion, to the Russian aggression in the territory of Ukraine, and many of them visit in other countries. And in case of Interpol to be as to say, occupied or used by the Russian Federation for its purposes, so we could expect quite tough times for Ukrainian politicians abroad. At the same time, to my mind, Interpol is not a political organization, and Interpol uses mostly the special forces of the countries where the operation occurs. So I was not very frightened with the candidate for the head of the Interpol, Russian general, because at the same time it's only one person, and he might make some difficulties, he might make some I would say illegal concerning the Interpol tasks, some illegal operations, but nevertheless Interpol is quite well standing organization.
You're saying there's a structure to keep that kind of
and one person can't make a big damage to the ways of operating Interpol forces. So, but nevertheless, first of all, it was a political issue.
You used the word invasion and occupation. That's an interesting word here. Would you say that that kind of, it's a part of a strategy, in part of the hybrid warfare waged by Russia, that kind of putting pawns in that kind of organization?
I don't think that Russia could use Interpol for making some, for easing invasion into Ukraine or some other countries. No, it's just a possibility to use Interpol for some political purposes of Russian Federation. It's the most important, from this point of view.
Now, Mr. Prokopchuk is still in Interpol. Is still, if I'm not wrong, vice chairman for Europe. Does he have still a certain influence there? Can he still?
Well, first of all, he has a big influence inside the Russian Federation, so it's quite enough. At the same time, there is a lot of another people in the European Bureau of Interpol, and at the same time there is another organization, Europol, which cooperates with Interpol in many operations, and so I don't think that Mr. Prokopchuk, General Prokopchuk, is a person who has a final and the most powerful decision. Actually, he is one of, and in this way, we can't expect significant damage, significant violations from his side. At the same time, we may remind several cases when not Mr. Prokopchuk, but actually Interpol made some not understandable decisions concerning the Ukrainian oligarchs, Ukrainian people who escaped after the Revolution of Dignity.
And I want to focus on this exactly. This question, because it's interesting. So, so then President Viktor Yanukovych was placed on the wanted list on the 12th of January 2015. Then an intervention from his lawyer or the firm he recruited pushed for this arrest warrant to be suspended. What's going to happen to that?
Well, you know, first of all, it's maybe a fall of Ukrainian special forces, Ukrainian police forces. It's my opinion, it's my impression, but it seems to me that in Ukraine there is a lack of good professionals among the people from police, from other organizations of such kind, and they failed to submit sufficient proofs, sufficient arguments, and you know, from my point of view, democracy is first of all a very careful, a very strict using of laws, and to make a suitcase, a country or organization needs to have very good arguments prepared together with some witnesses, etc. And this is what was not made by the Ukrainian organizations, Ukrainian authorities on the sufficient level. And actually I suspect some people in Interpol, it didn't take much efforts just to
destroy the basis.
To destroy, yes, to take it, put it off, and you know, without any significant consequences.
Now, that's an interesting issue here, because you're saying that Interpol is using resources of the country that it's implemented in, and you also call for the kind of lack of a professionalism here in Ukraine. So how to reconcile, how to despite this, as you said, a lack of professionalism, how to pursue the aims of Interpol, let's say for international warrants or things like that?
Well, first of all, it's not a fall of Interpol. It's actually consequences of long years when the Ukrainian authorities, Ukrainian legal forces worked, they followed the instructions from the top, not taking much attention to real proofs, real cases, real materials, real concrete arguments. It will take some time, it will take maybe several years to educate, to train a new generation of people in these organizations who would be capable to present, to collect necessary data, to present them. Look at many suitcases in Ukraine which actually are dissolved by the lack of materials, lack of arguments. So it's not only about the Interpol applications from Ukrainian side. It's about many, many other things, including some suitcase of corruption, some other bribery, etc. So all of this just says that we in Ukraine need to train very thoroughly a new generation, new professionals in this field. And I see that this job is under implementing, but it will take time.
Now, my understanding is these are internal reforms that must come from within Ukraine. But to conclude this interview and to go to a broader review, the fact that Mr. Prokopchuk has been dashed out from power, and that now Mr. Kim Jong is now taking this role of the head of Interpol, is it a victory for Ukraine? Or is there still a lot of work?
let's say in this way, it's a normal state of the art. So, yes, to some extent it's a victory. But I don't think it was a big struggle, first of all, because not only Ukraine, but several other countries and the United States among them were also against appointing Mr. Prokopchuk to this position. So let's say there was made what should be made.
Well, thank you for this overview. It was a pleasure to have you in the studio today. That was Alexander Demyanchuk, head of the Political Science Department at National University of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy. Thank you for watching the program and stay tuned for the rest.